In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make 8 fantastic, interesting new colour mixes from Payne's Grey. So today's video was going to be a general colour mixing video, but as I was writing the mixes down, I noticed something they all had in common, or at least about 50% of them. They were dark and lovely, just like Gimlet here. And so I decided that this week's video will be all about mixes from Payne's Grey. So let's get started, at least after I've fed this one. So let's talk about Payne's Grey quickly before we start. I'm using this one today. It's Talen's Rembrandt. Payne's Grey is a mixed colour, which means it's made up from more than one pigment. It also means that each manufacturer will have their own version, but it is known for being a very blue grey. So it's blue leaning. Now, all greys are majority blue pigment. Payne's Grey is especially known for being very blue, and that means that we can treat it as a muted blue when we're colour mixing. So let's get started with the first of our new mixes. So you can use any brands for these mixes. I've got some Cadmium Lemon here. This is Jackman's Art Materials, and this one here is another Talens colour. This is Quinacridone Pink, but you could use something like a Permanent Rose as well. We're actually going to start by mixing a very light colour. And so I'm going to start with water, because light colours in watercolour need a lot of water. So we're going to start by adding water. What I want to do is mix one of those neutral sort of off-whites. So I'm going to start with the yellow. We're actually mixing the 3 primaries together here, which will always give a neutral, because as I said, we're treating our Payne's Grey as a blue. So I'm going to mix the yellow and the pink together, starting with the weakest colours, working up to the strongest. And you see how little pigment there is here. Now I'm going to just add a tiny touch of the Payne's Grey. Now we've gone a little greenish here, so I'm going to add more pink. Let's go a little more yellow, and now we'll swatch. With these very pale colours, it's extremely hard to see what they actually look like until you swatch. So what we've got here is a very neutral off-white colour. If you want something that looks lighter and brighter, you could replace the Payne's Grey with a cerulean or a phthalo blue. Here we've got a beautiful light soft neutral, useful for so many things, particularly painting things like crockery. So let's start with a lighter colour. Let's start with mixing a soft grey green. So we already know we can take our Payne's Grey and we can add some yellow. So I'm going to mix a little here. It's a light colour, so I want plenty of water. So don't be afraid to start with water or put plenty of water in. Payne's Grey is really strong, so when you want a light colour, you need to just take the tiniest amount on your brush. I'm going to add some lemon. So we could use this colour as is, and you'll always want to swatch to see how things look. We can also neutralise it a little bit more by playing around with the pink. Red and green are opposite colours, so we can neutral down this green and make it even closer to a pale grey. I could put more yellow in, and you see here what a beautiful selection of light greens we can get just by using our lemon, our Payne's Grey, and this touch of Quinacridone Pink. The lemon is by Jackman's Art Materials, it's Cadmium Lemon, and the pink is another Talens colour, a Quinacridone Pink. You could also easily use something like a Permanent Rose, and look at these beautiful selection of soft grey greens that we can achieve. So we've used these colours mixed together. Let's look at a couple of mixes using them individually. One of my favourite mixes for cloud shadows is to take Payne's Grey and make it just a little bit more of a moody purple by adding in some pink. So we're going to get our Payne's Grey, add a touch of pink, and again you can mess around with this and take the mix as purple as you want. And then when we're painting our cloud shadows, I would typically go onto some clean water and add in my cloud shadow colour. So we've got a nice natural shade here, but we can go a little bit more purple as well. We'll add in some more pink, again starting with clean water and dropping in our beautiful cloud shadow colours. I'd be more inclined to use this stronger purple mix for a stormy landscape or possibly a sunset. Let's look at using our yellows now to create khaki and muted olive greens. When you're mixing with two colours that are so different in strength here, you always want to start the mix with the colour of least strength, because if you put too much grey in, you'll be adding, half a tube before you know it and wasting a load of paint in order to try and get it back to where it is. If you've got a colour that overwhelms another, sometimes it's just cheaper in terms of paint to start again. But an easy way of avoiding these problems is to start with the lightest colour and then just add the tiniest touch of the warmer colour. And we start to get some muted kind of light khaki greens. Let's add more of the grey. Here with this lemon, we can get a traditional khaki green. You can also use a warmer yellow like this one here. This is a Cadmium Yellow Deep. I'll mix straight on the paper, adding in my Payne's grey. You see, as we warm up the yellow, we can still get some beautiful muted khaki and olive toned greens. Just quickly before we do our 4 next recipes, could I ask you quickly to press that like button for me? It would be so helpful. Don't forget to free subscribe. Everything on this channel is fully approved by cats, and you'll be excited to learn that I now have cat approval for a second channel. So over on that channel, we do all sorts of random fun stuff. This week we're making bread. So you'll find a link to that in the video description. Let's get on now with recipe number 5. Let's look at a quick recipe for getting a warm purple or a plum. You need to start with a more scarlet orange based red. This one is a permanent light red by Talens. Now when you want a clean purple, you need to use a pink, but if you want that more maroon or plum style moody purple, you can experiment with using these warmer reds. This one is an almost brownish purple. Let's add some more Payne's grey. You see, with the majority Payne's grey, it will even start to mix colours that look more like asphalt or roof tiles. Let's try it with a colour that's not a clear pink, but has a little more pink in. This is an Alizarin Crimson. You see, it's a little bit more pink, but it's muted. Now we'll mix our Payne's grey in. We start to get these warmer plum colours. You can also experiment with adding it to a whole range of reds, including red oxides, and you'll get a lot more of these moody plums and purples. What about adding even a little scarlet red to this one here? Now we're getting into the territory of maroon. I'm going to show you now a mix that I use very often, and this is raw umber here. Now raw umber is a very weak colour, and beginners often find it in their palette and think, well, I don't know what that's very useful for, but the truth is it's a great mixing colour. So I often used to paint still lifes that had perhaps some driftwood in. I've painted pictures with trees, with dead wood, or just pale coloured trees where you need that very light neutral brown colour. So what we're doing here is we're mixing our Payne's grey with our raw umber to get that very light neutral brown that we find so often with a driftwood or with a light coloured tree. Now, one thing that's important to note about this mix is you may get a different result with different brands. So our Payne's grey has lots of blue in, and our raw umber has a fair amount of yellow. So in certain brands, this mixture may go green. You can see it's almost heading towards green. It's just stopping short of it. But if your mixture comes out green, all we need to do is neutralise with a bit of pink. We'll kill that green and you'll still have a beautiful neutral colour. And colours like this are just so useful. Let's finish with a couple of mixes that use blues. So I've got some indigo here, and the colour would suggest that it's a good colour for painting blue jeans. It's a little bit bright though, so I love if I've got someone, perhaps a figure, wearing some blue denim, I do love to add a little Payne's grey. Of course, this mix is useful for other things in landscapes like water. We get a very natural denim blue with indigo and Payne's grey. Let's look at a mix for painting black animals now, or black birds. So I've got a little space on this piece of paper. Now we can just use the Payne's grey alone. It's a fabulous alternative to black. However, if you've got those animals that look like a real blue black, a raven black perhaps, then a mix that I love to use is an ultramarine and Payne's grey. You get this beautiful strength of colour. There's so much more attractive than using a black. So before you leave this video, don't forget to have a look in the video descriptions, all sorts of free stuff down there for you and a link to my second channel. Do let me know in the comments what your own favourite Payne's grey mixes are. And please send some good thoughts for Gimlet, who has to have some quite extensive dental surgery next week, and he's very old, so let's hope he gets through that okay. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon.